Good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm extremely delighted to be here with you all today at the VMware Nirman conference. Hope you're having a fabulous day and enjoying the amazing lineup of speakers, inspirational speakers, and exciting sessions at our conference today. I'm here to host the Empower session. Take charge of your career. What would you do if you were not afraid? With me today is a super inspiring and highly motivational speaker, Vaishali Kasturi, Head of Enterprise Business, Top Enterprise, Mid-Market, and Global Businesses for India and South Asia at Amazon Web Services. She's based out of Bangalore. Thank you, Vaishali, for accepting our invite to be our past speaker for this session. A brief intro to our topic. Successful career planning and management helps to produce the desired outcome at every stage that impacts our life in a positive way. This includes personal fulfillment, work-life integration, achieving various milestones, financial security, and lots more. It's observed that people who have solid career management strategies with a supporting career planning process have the edge when it comes to moving up. Let's hear more on this topic. An intro to our past speaker for this session, a gold medalist, super achiever, who wears multiple hats. She has 25 years of enriching experience in corporate and investment banking, credit, analytics outsourcing, and consulting businesses. Vaishali has led both sales and operational teams and has successfully led and managed many strategic projects through her career at Citi, Infosys, Goldman Sachs, and Deloitte. She is passionate about working with female founders and startups. She co-founded Sonder Connect in 2015, which is the first mentoring platform for female founders in India. Vaishali is super inspiring, a super achiever, and there is lots more that we would talk as we go ahead. So Vaishali, let me start off with the first question that we have for the session today. Championing our own career. What should mid-career professionals keep in mind while charting out their career advancement and journey? If you are an individual contributor moving into a people management role, what should you be mindful of to set up yourself up for success? Just some insights from your journey.
Yeah. I think so. I'll take that question in two parts. The first part is about owning your own career. It is not only the organization's imperative to make sure that your career progresses. I think you need to take charge of your career just like you take charge of your personal life. Knowing what is important for you and asking and having conversations and things like in my organization we have things like a career guidance plan, what we call as a CGP, where you put it together and you have 6 monthly conversations with your manager and perhaps your manager's manager. So taking ownership as to what is your true north, what do you want to do, what do your next 2 to 3 years look like, and having those active conversations is a tool that I think you should definitely very actively use. And I think the piece which most women particularly don't do well is be more aggressive about your career. I think we always, even if we are 70-80% ready, we are afraid of asking for the next role or for a promotion, or we tend to be very conservative in terms of taking risks and taking bets. So I think particularly early in your career, have the courage to take bets and ask for roles which you may not be 100% ready for, but you feel very passionately about. And on your question about IC to manager, I think it's very classic. All of us go through it at some stage or the other in our careers. The first thing you need to do as you step into that role is earn the trust of the people who work for you. Chemistry is most important between manager and people who report to you. If there is no trust, then you may be the smartest person in the room all the time, but you will never be able to get to the outcomes that you want. So I'd say, spend some time in understanding. Suppose you're stepping into a role, you have people reporting to you, you have a new business that you're running. Spend some time in understanding and building bridges with the people. You don't have to, as you grow and you leverage, people are going to be your biggest assets. You will never be the person who has all the answers, but you can be the person who can help them use the right mechanisms and get to the answer. So your job as you grow more senior is chief problem solver, and not just as, this is my job and this is how I'm going to implement. Earn trust, build relationships, understand the business well, and go and iterate on those principles over and over again.
Thank you. I think that's going to lead me to the next question. You spoke about taking risk and making bets. That would also mean, being while you're uncomfortable, at the same time trying to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Being at the peak of your career, how comfortable are you to go ahead by taking a step back or shifting gears to pursue a different career? In that course, how important is it to stay agile and to reinvent and stay relevant? What would be your take on this?
Sure. So I'll give you an interesting example about taking risks. Today, I like to say that I lead the enterprise business for India, South Asia for AWS. I'd say it is perhaps the hottest job in enterprise tech in India. But I've had nothing to do with technology until 5 to 6 years ago. I was a banker. I did corporate banking. I did pivoted to investment banking. My second pivot was around the whole outsourcing, knowledge outsourcing industry. And then my third pivot in my 25-year career was then towards technology. And it happened to me as I became a consumer of tech, and I felt like using technology is an integral part of giving better outcomes to my customers. And I got closer and closer to the concept of technology, ML, automation, cloud. And then I actually made a list of companies, 3-4 years ago, which is the industry that I want to align with and which is the company that I wanted to align with. I made a list of 2 to 3 companies, and AWS was top of my list. So I called a friend in Seattle and I said, hey, would AWS ever hire someone like me? I don't know infra and I don't know cloud, right? But I know how businesses work and I'm really good at CXO conversations. And before I knew it, I was in the loop at AWS. I got a call. I joined them. And even when I joined them, I joined a business which wasn't that large. It was one of our smaller businesses, which is now fortunately accelerating. But I took the risk in saying that this is my true north. If I have to take a step back and do something smaller, then I can bounce back after I've proven myself. So I think it was a risk that I took. Touchwood, fortunately it paid off. About learning and reinventing, I think that's a very good question. I didn't know much about compute, storage, networking. How do you price? How do you price cloud contracts? How do you sell cloud? To a plethora of different customers and verticals. So I had to learn a lot of that. But I used what I had and I knew well, which is I was good at managing customer relationships. I had to learn the business. And for that, I had to really roll up my sleeves. I took a lot of certifications. I did a lot of exams, and I continue to strive to learn more because, this industry is so big. So if there is any new program that is dropped for the sales team, I am among the first people to go and, carve out half an hour on the weekend, study it, whether it's an analytics play, whether it's a VMware play, whether it's a database, whatever it is. I will always be among the first people to study and take that exam, even though I am not, in many cases, not mandated to do so. But that keeps the hunger alive. The second piece is I will pick on people. I called our VMware salesperson. I said, hey, sit down with me, explain to me what's the sales play. How do I talk to customers? How do I identify opportunities? So it does 2 things. One is I learn on the go from the smartest and the best in the business. And second is they get a chance to interact with a leader like me, whom they may not get to talk to on a daily basis. So I think it serves both purposes.
Very powerful, Vaishali. And it is, this so amazing, I could see a lot of strategies out there that has been in the making and you continue to do so. You spoke about being work smart, I know about being smart. So my next question is, work smart, we say play better and party harder. What is the key to striking the balance between work and life? What would be your few tips on work-life integration, the most important ones?
Yeah, yeah. So, work-life balance is really a myth, if you ask me. And if I were to be brutally honest, and, given that a large part of our last 2 years has gone into trying to make everything work from home, and there is so much, happening around you. Many of us are not blessed with the opportunity to have a dedicated workspace at home. Many of us may have very young children. We may not have support at home. So particularly for women, like 70% of the household responsibilities in India continue to be borne by women. It's difficult for you to have to say that this is my strict routine and this is how, I'm going to work 9 to 6. After 6 o'clock, I will not do this, or before 9 o'clock, I will not work. Or so the best way there is no best way. There is nobody solved this problem, to be honest, but I like to look at it as an integration. So work is happening, life is happening. On many days, my work will take priority over everything else. But there are certain days where I may feel that I need to focus. There is something very important happening in my child's life. That day, I will not focus on work, but I will prioritize my family. So I have 2 to 3 priorities in life. There is work, there's my passion for running and fitness, and there is my family. So I have to juggle all 3. And, I've noticed that if you put very hard slots that I will do this in this slot, it doesn't work. You have to be fluid. There are certain days where my day starts at 6 a.m. I'm on calls, but I will take out, an hour and a half, 2 hours in the afternoon, 12 to 2, I'll spend time with family. Or if I've had a really early start, like a 6 a.m. call, I may block my calendar 9 to 10, and I may quickly hit the gym for an hour. So I try and integrate it, and I try not to have hard boundaries in my mind and be fluid and accommodative. Nobody expects me that if my day started at 5 or 6 a.m. that I will be working 16 hours. I will block an hour out and do something else. Similarly, during a month or a quarter or a weekend, I think if you plan in advance and learn to integrate and don't keep fixed time periods, particularly in today's context, I think it might work better for everyone. Block some time in your calendar for reflection, for thinking. What we have done in AWS is once a month, we block Fridays for Wellness Day, where people don't do any meetings and they reflect on anything. Either you spend time with your family that day, an extra day, or you just focus on learning and development, or whatever is your choice. So we've tried to do that, one Friday a month, and I think people are loving it.
Really, really good. I wanted to talk about that. We spoke about, like how important it is to be flexible. And I'm sure that you are an inspiration for many people around you in your leadership role. So my next question on leadership, what does it take to build the confidence to ask for a seat at the table? What do successful organizations do to empower their women workforce? And what can others learn from them? You've been here to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. What is it?
Two parts. Yeah, I think there are 2 parts to your question. What does it take to ask for a seat at the table, and what can organizations do?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a very interesting story. When I was the India MD and CEO for Experian, which is a credit bureau, I used to be the chair of the board. But the first time I went into a board meeting, so investors would walk in and then I have to go chair the meeting. The first day I went in, I felt very awkward taking the head of the table in a room full of 15 men and being the only woman. The only other woman who was there, who was my assistant, who was organizing, the table and the seating arrangement and everything that need to be done. So I think women tend to have, we talk about it a lot, the imposter syndrome. Do I really deserve a seat on the table? So I think the first mental block that women have to get past is, I have a seat at the table and I deserve it. And I'm going to go and sit at the head of the table. So it needs a little bit of self coaching to say that I have a seat at the table, I'm going to go and sit there. In any physical meeting room, I think virtual world is fairly democratic, but in any physical meeting room, I will see many of the women will take seats which are away from the main seat or take seats which are in the second or third row, whereas men are very comfortable going and taking a seat at the table. So both physically and mentally, I think you have to attune yourself that you have earned it, and take a seat at the table, ask for that next job or that next role, even if you're 70 to 80% ready, because I'm sure that most of us would work doubly hard to then, once we have the seat at the table, to constantly prove that we are worthy of that seat. I think organizations can do a lot here. When there are roles that open up, nudge women to apply for those roles. Ensure that if you're opening up a new requirement for a role, ensure that you have an equal number of male and female candidates. When you are doing, for example, resume screening, many organizations now are tending to remove the name of the person from that resume. So you don't know until you have actually gone into the interview whether it's a male or a female. And there is enough research. I mean, there is research around the world about how removing the gender actually, not telling people the gender of the candidate actually improves the chances of women making the cut, because whether we like it or not, we are born with and we are faced with so many unconscious biases in our mind that on many an occasion we are not able to make a fair decision. I think the other piece which some organizations do well is, they look at things like compensation, promotion velocity, which are the critical P&L roles, how many of them are going to women? Is the promo velocity of women better or worse than the whole organization? So different filters, and you can make it very data driven. And finally, of course, the ability we all know that having more women in business, in organizations, and both internal roles and customer facing makes the company more innovative. It gives companies better ROI. It gives companies better profitability. Organizations tend to take more a well-informed view of risk. So I think the data is out there about the need to build inclusive organizations. The final point is, getting this agenda top down from the board, from the chairman's office, all the leaders around. If they drive this passionately themselves, I think, that's the best place to start.
Amazing answer, Vaishali. Very, very strong. And, it really speaks a lot about your leadership as well. So another important aspect that, we always speak about is the power of mentorship. The importance of a strong support network. It's, there's lots to it. How do you seek out the right mentors to help advance your career? And also about women empowering women. Can you tell us about the exceptional women who would have supported and inspired you on your career path?
Sure. So I think, the first part of your question was around
power of
mentorship, right? Mentorship. Usually organizations assign, you have mentoring programs and you assign mentors to women, but I think mentoring can only take you so far. I think mentoring is a great tool to build your network, right? You ask someone to be your mentor, but I don't think mentoring in an official context is a lifelong thing. I mean, you may have a mentor for 5-6 months, you may do a couple of meetings, and then it's time to refresh and move on to the next set. A mentor doesn't have skin in the game. So I'm a great proponent of sponsorship versus mentoring. And, I put together the female MD sponsorship program in Goldman Sachs in 2011-12. We said we weren't promoting enough women to managing director across the world. So obviously I did that only for India. And through a consistent effort of over 2 to 3 years, we then hit a situation where we had 50% of the MD class globally was women. So it takes a lot of work, and sponsorship is different. You have a sponsor and you have a protege. Sponsor has a skin in the game. The sponsor has to raise their hand to say that I'm willing to be the sponsor for this female candidate. They have visibility into their line of work. And obviously they will coach, they will mentor, they will give the candidate, the protege, very hard feedback as well. But then when the time is right, and if they believe the candidate has done what she needs to, they will have a seat at the table and the power to implement and uplift change and positively impact the career of the protege. If the sponsor doesn't have skin in the game and doesn't believe in the candidate, they should not be a sponsor. But I think organizations are now beginning to put formal sponsorship programs, and I think that is sort of the tool to adopt for the future. I've had a lot of mentors, in my life, and I'd say many of them have been male mentors. Some of them have been female, and it's not because I raised my hand. It's because maybe early in my career or even today, somebody says, I think she's talented, I would love to see her progress, and they would want to mentor me, they would want to sponsor me. So I think it's a two-way street. It has to work both ways. You have to live up to the expectations of your sponsor or mentor as well. And I think there was one more question on was it okay? That was what mentoring.
Yeah. That brings me to another question on switching jobs, Vaishali. Like as we, different people take different career paths to advance their career. Some of us do it on the same company. Some of us do change organizations to advance our career. The question here is, how do you effectively navigate career crossroads?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, like I said, again, there is no silver bullet. People take different, career paths. But I think some sort of basic rules that you need to ask yourself. Change comes at a cost. It comes at and especially for women, it comes at a very heavy emotional cost. Every time you join a new organization, or you even change roles within an organization, somewhere, whether you like it or not, and I'm being brutally honest, that your meter starts ticking all over again from zero. You have to prove yourself, right? So be very cautious about how you plan the change, whether it is internally or to another organization, because you will pay a very heavy cost in terms of time taken to scale, to understand the new organization, their way of working, earning trust with people who work with you, who work for you, your peers, your managers, your global stakeholders, your customers. So change has a cost, right? So keep that in mind, that when you change your role or your job, I'm not saying that you shouldn't change. I mean, you have to, like you may outgrow a role, you may raise your hand to do a tougher role, but make sure that you're mentally prepared, physically prepared, your family is prepared, everybody around you is willing to support you for the first 6 months to 1 year, depending on whether your role is changing or your organization. So timing is extremely important. Second is, why will you change? Be very clear. Why are you implementing this change? Is it out of sheer boredom? Is it that you plotted this role is important in your career trajectory? Or are you just doing it for like designation, compensation? I think so many people don't realize, but when they do a role change, which is purely looks like there's a lot of money being put on the table, I would say, 70 to 80% of the time, I've seen people who take decisions based purely on compensation regret it. In my 25 years, that's been my learning. So, I have taken changes in jobs which have actually set me back on my compensation because I felt it was the right job to do. But I've also seen that it has propelled me. If you give it 2 to 3 years, know why you're making this change. And it then propelled me to a role which I would not have otherwise got. So, be ready physically, mentally, make sure you're making the change for the right reasons. Write down a piece of paper, pros and cons, what are your expectations, and pull that piece of paper out. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I said, make your notes and ask yourself a year down the line whether the change was worth it, and what did you learn from it. I think write down. I mean, I still have the piece of paper. When I was joining AWS, I took out a piece of paper and I was really sort of, should I not, and I wrote it down very clearly and I folded it and I kept it in my wallet. So on occasion when I feel a little stressed, I just look at it and I feel better.
Did you go and revisit that page anytime after that?
Yes, I do. It's still in my wallet.
Wow, very nice. You spoke about 3 important things in the earlier part of our session, and of which one is all about, like you're passionate about running. So let's get on to some of those aspects. So becoming the first Indian woman to complete the world major marathon circuit is super impressive. What lessons have you learned on that trail that apply to your professional life as well? I
think the basic fundamental learning is that, neither your career nor life is a sprint, it's a marathon. So, like when you're running a marathon, you'll start off really well, and then somewhere you will have an energy dip. You will refuel, you will repace yourself, you'll start off again. Typically on the 32nd kilometer of the 42-kilometer run is where your mind will play games on you. Because in most of your training, you will run up to 32. Nobody will run a 42 kilometers for a 42-kilometer race. You'll run 75-80% of that distance repeatedly in training, and your body and your mind doesn't know what to expect between 32 and 42. So your mind will play a lot of games on you, and you have to push through it to understand that, yes, I have trained for this. I understand this. It is unknown, but I have trained my mind and body to know what to expect, and auto suggest to yourself how you're going to break it up kilometer by kilometer, where you're going to take a water break, are you going to take an energy gel, and then plan it. So similarly in life and in career, you will go through a lot of ups and downs, but you have to ask yourself, and I'm not saying that you should never give up. I'm not of the school of thought that even if you're getting a heart attack in a marathon, you should run. That's not it. You have to learn to recognize how much of it is mental and how much is physical. So very similarly in your job, when you're hitting roadblocks, or in your personal life, you're hitting roadblocks, over time, you have to learn that this is a situation that I really need to show grit. And I know that if I just stay the course, or if I make some changes, I will get to the other side. And where is it that you believe that this is it? I have done everything that I can, and it's time to hit the eject button. I think in 80 to 90% of the cases, the answer is grit. That, don't give up, stay the course, see what you can do different. And the fact that you will learn something and you will grow. And when you're on the other side, you will carry these life experiences to other parts of your work and life and do better. So look at every, I know it sounds a little cheesy, but every problem is actually an opportunity. And know that, even if like I tell my, I run a sales team, so sometimes you occasionally lose a deal. And I was telling a lady in my team last night that what do you learn from it? As long as you learn something, you will carry this into your next sales cycle.
Yeah, great. Like we spoke about grit and resilience, as well as every crisis is an opportunity. So that also means that we are also taking some calculated measures on our personal investments as we go ahead. So what are your tips on personal investments? What would be your favorite personal investment, and how do you go about with it?
So I like to, two things are very close to my heart. One is my inherent nature of being curious, and the need for knowledge really keeps me going. I need to read a lot. I need to know what's happening in the world around me, not just relating to my job, but what's happening in the world. I think it's important to me. So I spend a lot of time reading, catching up on stuff that's happening in the world. I love to watch the news at night. I love to read small articles on various things, not just in the tech world, but what's happening in various industries. And the second piece that really keeps me going is my thirst for being fit, feeling good when I wake up in the morning. So no matter what, I will try and grab on 90% of the time I will be successful. I'll grab an hour for myself, either go for a run or train at the gym with my trainer or something like that, because I feel that gives me the energy to go through the day, because we all wake up every morning with 21 things in our head about work. I need to get this done. I need to get that done. And if I use that 1 hour, and I literally say this, that when I come back from my run after an hour or from the gym, I feel the cobwebs in my head have cleared, and no problem seems big enough to pull me down. I feel like I have the mental frame to go and address and perhaps solve most problems.
This takes me to another thought, Vaishali, and that is to do with, I think you're a lot self-motivated, and a lot of things comes from within you. Like you drive it with a lot of passion. So many a times one wants to be recognized or rewarded when they go beyond. What has been your sustained inspiration, or how do you keep yourself motivated? How important is recognition versus self-motivation for you?
Yeah. So I think, all of us like to be recognized from time to time, right? I mean, who doesn't like to be? I mean, perhaps there may be very few people who say that, recognition doesn't mean much to me, and, good for them. But as a normal human being with human tendencies, when you do something well, when you work hard, sometimes you win or lose, but people want to be recognized and rewarded. It's an innate human psychology that if you do something well, you would like someone to call it out. But I've also realized as you grow older in your career, in your life, that external ratification is good, but you shouldn't come to depend on it too much. As the world is getting busier, as people are getting busier, I think you will need to find enough from within you to keep yourself motivated. And I say this, and particularly when you look at social media these days, it's all about people putting stuff and, people saying how great each other is. And a lot has become sort of external, trying to get satisfaction from people telling you how good you are, whereas very little is being said about how much you need to do to keep yourself motivated and positive every day. Increasingly, you should rely on your own internal meters and your true north of what truly gives you happiness, and you should go for that. I think in a longer lifespan and career, I think, please rely heavily on internal motivation, because the world outside, to be brutally honest, is not always very kind.
Agree with you. Totally agree with you. I strongly believe in that. One more question before I get to the wrap-up part of it. Your take on gender intelligence versus gender equality. Your tips on why one needs to be gender intelligent at work.
Yeah. So a lot is being said about gender equality, but I think honestly, we have a long way to go, right? I mean, we are nowhere, whether it is at work after the Industrial Revolution, when more women were called in to start working, or it is even at home today. We're nowhere as a not just the world, but particularly in India, we're nowhere equal to gender equality. But what we can do is gender sensitization. Learn to acknowledge that men, women are wired a little differently, and what does it take? Like if I'm in a meeting, for example, and I see that particularly in a room full of men, if there are just one or two women, my team is very vocal, so the women are very outspoken. I think they sometimes don't give a chance to the men to speak. But in any situation, make sure that you go around the room and ask people at the end of it, whether it's male or female, right? If people haven't had a chance to express their thoughts, make sure that you pull them out, draw them in, and ask them for their views. I think at Amazon, we have a really great way to run our meetings. We usually start with a narrative. So speaking style, gender, that polish doesn't come in the way of good ideas. Because when you do a PowerPoint presentation, the speaking style sometimes takes over. And, even if the idea is not good and the speaker is really great, or the speaker is not good, or the idea is great, doesn't go well. So we believe in narrative. We will write a document, a 2-pager or a 6-pager. Our meetings start off with silent reading of the document for the first, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then we will go around the room and everybody will get a chance to critique, to speak, to comment, and the leader always speaks at the end. So I feel this removes all kinds of disparities, whether it's gender, whether it's language, whether it's cultural. And then it becomes a more inclusive, data-driven sort of comments and feedback, with the leader typically speaking last.
Very powerful, Vaishali. And I think, being a good listener and contributing to the last as a leader, I think it really helps the team in many ways. So completely agree with you there. As we wrap up the session, truly inspiring, very motivating session. I really want to wrap up the session with 5 questions. I want to call it the famous 5 shots from Vaishali as we wrap the session. So quickly getting on to it, what keeps you motivated?
I think, I don't mean to sound morose, but as I grow older, I also realize that, your lifespan is limited. We are all mortal. And so what keeps me motivated is that today, this moment, this conversation, this second, this point of time, talking to Renuka is never going to come back again. So how do I make the best use of it? I don't have to be in 4th drive every time, but this moment, whatever I'm doing, it has to be the best, and I have to be fully energized and in it to be able to savor this moment for the rest of my life. Because if I idle away, and I may choose that for this moment, for the next 1 hour, I want to rest, but let it be the best rest of the day. If I want to do a presentation, let it be the best of the day. So, ensuring that you make the best use of your time. And I love this quote that at the end of the day, all of us are walking each other home, right, to the end of our life. The moment we are born, our clock starts ticking. So make sure that you make the best use of this moment of time.
Can't agree more. Live in the moment, like enjoy the life and live in the moment. If you had extra hours in a day, where would you spend them?
I would do a lot more physically. I would, do many other activities, go for a longer run, spend more time at the gym, do some more yoga, do a little bit more reading. But I really enjoy my physical fitness, so I would definitely indulge.
Great. How many days could you survive without the internet?
I think I could go for a while. I think typically there'll be a withdrawal symptom for some time. But I think with a good book, a good road, good pair of running shoes, some nice food, I think I can unplug. I would like that. I think I would enjoy it for a while.
And a while is what? What would be that go for a while means? Like...
I think if I get over the first 4-5 days, then I think I could go on for months, maybe even a year. I don't know. Maybe I'll just live off the grid. I don't have any JOMO. I don't have any joy of missing out. It doesn't exist for me.
What are the top 3 things on your to-do list? The next top 3 things on your to-do list?
Right now, my to-do list is, as of today, is planning a Christmas break with my family, and making sure that I end this year really well for my business at AWS. And then planning what the next year will look like, and taking some downtime and seeing what am I going to put on my list for 2023 on the personal side, on the work side, looking forward to opening up and starting to do a little bit of travel with my family. So that's on my list for now.
Excellent. Last one. If you could try out any job for a month, what job would you choose?
I don't know, honestly, but I would love to perhaps be a fitness trainer or something like that, right? Push people hard and have some fun, own a fitness center, give some lessons, something like that.
Fabulous. Vaishali, I can't thank you enough. This has been a super, super amazing session. And we from VMware Nirman conference team, we really want to thank you for the session. Before I wrap up, a few takeaways that really stood out through the session is taking ownership of moving to your true north. That's really, I think all of us have to take individual ownership about that. Being aggressive about your career, taking risks and bets as we go ahead, it cannot be without it. And also about the fact that earn the trust of the people around you, because they'll always come around. So it's important that we sustain the trust as we go ahead. And being a consumer of tech, as well as to continue to strategize all the time in your career planning, everything that you want to do about your career. I think at every time, at every intervention, you need to continue to keep strategizing it. And it's about a lot of strategies, lots of hard work, to stay relevant, to continue to reinvent and being there. I think that speaks volumes. So thank you. Thank you for being with us here today. And thank you for this amazing session.
Thank you, Renuka. I'm just going to end with a favorite quote of mine, and this usually resonates really well with everyone who hears it. So I'm going to end with that quote, which says, dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and look at yourself in a manner that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. Thank you so much, Renuka, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaishali.